Welcome to Viseland. Bringing you another great episode. I'm Jason Visenberg, and I'm going to kick it over to Michael Visenberg, my co-host here. Did you watch the game tonight?
Did indeed, sir. How about yourself? Did you get a chance to watch the end of that one?
I got to catch the end, and that was super worth it because it was interesting. It's like Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray. They've been putting up 50 points, and then this is a game that like ends in the 80s total.
Yeah. Denver scored 30 points in the second half.
Yeah,
Utah scored 36 in the first.
yeah.
It was the fact that Denver had 50 points in that entire half, and that's usually what's been happening, when you're probably about halfway through the second quarter in most series. So, yeah, this was definitely a throwback score to the mid-90s and early 2000s, but it was a great game, a great series. And, yeah, just amazing that Denver was able to come back from being down 3-1. And, wow, the shootout between Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray was next level.
Awesome. Yeah, and Jamal Murray with that spin move he had last week, like that was one of the coolest moves I've seen when he splits a double, spins it off, kind of lays it up with his right. That was pretty epic. And I like Denver has some nice little pieces. It's going to be interesting to see what they do against the Clippers. Like the Clippers are deep, and obviously they're going to probably deploy Patrick Beverly on Jamal and try to kind of frustrate him. But yeah, I think it'll be a great series.
As we saw last series, Patrick Beverly played one game and was completely dominated by Luka Doncic. We'll see what happens here, but I'm guessing either way, whatever team won the Utah-Denver series was probably going to get smashed. But you never know. We'll see if Paul George gets back to his old ways. He had a few pretty streaky shooting games, to say the least, in that series against Dallas. And, yeah, we have the Raptors being down 2-0 to Boston.
That's rough. That's a tough spot to be in right now.
Indeed. And a game 7 of a series that's kind of gone back and forth tomorrow between Houston and Oklahoma City. And
that was a baffling finish to game 6 of kind of not having the ball, letting Harden make the move at the end of the game. But
crazy sauce. Yeah, it's classic Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, so it's winner gets the right to play the Lakers. So it'll be
live you die by Russ.
Interesting to see. Yeah, well, again, it's a direct Chris Paul versus Russell Westbrook. That it's like interesting when you always see those trades like directly affect each other. They're on the opposite team. It always kind of adds that extra kind of like animosity.
Oklahoma City was like better this year.
No, totally. But again, like Chris Paul getting traded. I don't know. It's got a little more.
Paul is fantastic.
Oh, he's incredible. He shows signs like he still has games like he's in his 20s. Like he's definitely energy speed have not gone anywhere. But what are we going to be talking about today? What are we breaking down?
So last week we gave you the Viseland mock draft 1.0. This is the first one that we did was what we felt the teams were going to do. We did a lottery mock draft. This week I thought to switch it up a bit, we'll give you our opinion on the matter. And my co-host Jason Visenberg and I, we're going to do a brother-to-brother mock draft of our opinion of what should happen. Most people would call this like a grade A mock draft of what, if it was your opinion and the team made the perfect pick. We'll call ours a grade B+ mock draft.
Yeah.
And give ourselves some margin for error. But, basically we thought it would be a fun exercise to go over guys who we feel are the likely first-round picks or would have a first-round grade from us and go back and forth and kind of give you an idea of what our big boards look like.
No, definitely. So we're going to start it off. Michael has been given the first pick in the draft.
I gave the first pick to myself. And so, yeah, I'm going to do the odd numbers. Jason's going to do the even numbers. And, yeah, we'll start off at the top. We've got Minnesota Timberwolves. It seems like I've done a bunch of these mock draft pods lately, and I always have the first pick. It's crazy. In real life, I never get the first pick. I like in fantasy football, in fantasy basketball, in most things in life.
When there's no stakes other than hate from the comments, you can get the first pick. Yeah.
Exactly. When there's no stakes other than like me ruining the mock draft.
The rest of the pace of the draft by taking someone ridiculous. Yeah.
I keep taking Peyton Pritchard. It really is pissing people. No, so yeah, we'll start off with Minnesota Timberwolves, and the first player I will take is LaMelo Ball. He's at the top of my big board. I think that he has the highest upside of anybody in the draft. He is a fantastic playmaker, like just the best passer in the draft, great ball handler, has really good size, is going to come in, put up numbers. The shooting is a little bit concerning, the defensive intensity and awareness at times. But these are things I feel like, he can build on, and there's just nobody with more talent in the draft than LaMelo, I feel. So that would be the guy that I would take if I were Minnesota.
Yeah, I'd say, it's the highest possible reward. And worst case scenario, you sell a ton of jerseys.
Absolutely.
And get some merch. But actually, we did a poll last week after our mock, and we were asking, everybody on our Twitter. So if you follow us on Twitter at Viseland, who do you think is going to be the number one pick in the draft? LaMelo got 45.2% of the vote. And I have to say, now with my second pick, I am going to take, the person that's actually number 2 on my board as well is Anthony Edwards from Georgia to Golden State. It's hopefully Golden State can trade out of this pick. Like that's their ultimate scenario. But again, at the end of the day, they really need to fill this energy role that's really missing. Like Sean Livingston's gone, Andre Iguodala's gone. They kind of need somebody else to give them a little bit of a boost, maybe, at the beginning to really go with that second unit and figure out what they're gonna do. Because hopefully, if they trade out the pick, that would be their ideal. But if not, like, gives them a good energy player, and then hopefully they can shop Wiggins and kind of maybe try to turn him around again. Take what you got and flip it again. But he got our most votes for our number 1 pick. He got 51.6% of the votes.
And that's who you felt Minnesota was going to take.
I did.
No. I'm saying the poll was who you felt Minnesota was going to take.
With the number 1, or like who would you take with the number 1 pick? Was how it was.
Was it? I felt like it was
going to be the number 1 pick.
Where who you felt like who was going to be the number 1 pick as opposed to who you would take.
Yeah, the pick was who do you think is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. So it's kind of putting it in that like who's actually going to.
That's more of who like you think is actually going to be the pick.
Yeah, and so Anthony Edwards got 51.6%.
We need to do an opinion poll. Let's get an opinion poll. That's our next one. We'll phrase it differently and say who would you take with the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
And but I think that the likely scenario is that Anthony Edwards does go number 1 as well. We'll see what happens, but I think that would be a good scenario for Golden State. I think they would be much more likely to take Anthony Edwards as opposed to LaMelo Ball, and think that he could fit in there, and and then maybe even like a kind of a better trade scenario for them as well. Like maybe there are more people willing to trade up for Edwards. Either way, I feel like they may have some willing trade recipients, and both these picks could get shopped.
Yeah, and they have nothing. Like Golden State has the least amount to really lose in this draft because they're in such a great position.
Yeah,
that they don't need to be in, other than the fact that they kind of just had this down year due to those circumstances of Steph, Clay all being down.
If you get a really good scoring guard who is probably more of a threat off the ball, that could be a really nice scenario for you. So at number 3 we have the Charlotte Hornets now. And the guy on my board, so my first tier of this draft, I should put it that way, is 3 players. And I will take the player that I feel has maybe a higher threshold than anybody else, and that's Killian Hayes. He plays in Germany, plays for Ulm in Germany, and he is a big, I guess, could play either guard spot, can play, still not necessarily showing the best signs of off the ball, but I feel like he could get a lot better there, but really good on the ball, very left-hand dominant, but still like just make some plays that truly, I think will progress moving forward, has the ability to create space, not necessarily the most bursty athlete, but still just makes a lot of plays, really good passer, great feel for the floor on both ends. And I just feel like if you're obviously Charlotte, they're thinking, most people are thinking center. I just think, why not take the best talent and the best player on the board? I still feel that, you could possibly add a center in free agency for just as much value as maybe you draft here. And then Hayes just has a higher upside than anybody else.
Yeah, totally. I feel like the drafting of centers is really devalued right now in this current, NBA. So it's like, what's the rush? You can get some other big guy to just kind of go and get you some rebounds. But yeah, Killian Hayes has that potential. I mean, that could be super high reward. And he also has the best of both worlds, where he's played overseas, but he's also American born.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's definitely not going to be like a culture shock coming over to the NBA to play. Number 4 pick, I don't have it as high on my board, but I definitely think this is just the pick that kind of makes sense to me the more I look at the Bulls roster, and I think to myself in my heart, I'm going to go with Denny Avdija, Maccabi Tel Aviv. Basically, I look at that Bulls roster right now. You don't want to add another point guard. I think Kobe White is the point guard. I think your money's tied in with Zach LaVine. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to get you a championship, but you've invested in him. You have Lauri Markkanen. You also have Wendell Carter. So I think this is just kind of that one player at that small forward position that hopefully, rounds out their starting 5, and hopefully that's something they can build with going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a very likely pick for Chicago in the actual draft as well. At pick number 5, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the player I will go with here is Onyeka Okongwu. I know that he is a center, and they still do have that pretty stacked big man roster, as we talked about last week. I just feel like Onyeka has the chance to be a really solid big man, and maybe provide have that defensive versatility that Tristan Thompson provided, when he was at his best, but also a much higher offensive upside, better free throw shooter than Thompson, still a really good athlete. I feel there are some definite parallels there, but I just think Onyeka has an even higher upside to bring some offense to the table. I think he's just a great energy big. He's going to be one of the best finishers in the class, and he just explodes off the floor. I think a lot to as far as his body and adding strength, and then his ability to provide at least some potential versatility as a defender and rim protection. So yeah, he would be who I would take at 5 for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, look at Kevin Love's trying to get himself out. Tristan's kind of on the way out as well. So kind of something. And Cleveland's the kind of team that you could see them back in the lottery again next year, probably. I mean, they'd probably be booking a return ticket back to the lottery there. Number 6, we have the Atlanta Hawks, and then I'm gonna go with someone that actually, he's been kind of all over the place in his time, and actually we had him in our poll for number 1. Who would you take number 1? He got 0% of the vote. Not even his mom. Not even his mama came on and voted for him. So it's kind of a little sad. But I think that the talent intrigue factor is there. We didn't get to see a lot of him in college. James Wiseman, he is a center. He is. Onyeka Okongwu's a little shorter. That 6'9". This is that 7-foot center traditional.
Yeah.
That I think at this point in the draft, you're looking pretty forward to having a player of that kind of value slip over to you.
Do you just think he's a higher value than anybody else out there, in terms of just, gaining players to possibly make future trades? Because they did trade for Clint Capella, and I'm just kind of wondering how that will work, as they're both, true five.
They're both big guys, yeah. But I think, again, the way the NBA, having a backup, and James Wiseman's probably not going to come in and be ready to be, the guy either, and I just don't know who else you can really number 6, like when you see him still there, I think it's just something you have to kind of go with again, like probably try to trade out of, but I think if he's there, it's worth, the possible risk.
Yeah, and I think it's also a spot to possibly trade and maybe, try and get like another, maybe a more established player with somebody that you possibly drafted in the last few years or so as well. So, yeah, I still feel like Wiseman's going to be like a pretty enticing prospect. Just not many 7-footers that move like that. For all you can say about him struggling like with instincts on both ends of the floor and not necessarily being like the quickest off the floor, being a kind of disaster in the pick and roll. The guy still has a lot of qualities that teams
played the 3 games in Vegas, and he was 19.7, like just under 20 and 10. Like he had over 10 rebounds, and he was just under 20 points. And who knows what he's been, what he's been really working out on during this period as well. So like, and I don't know what the workout situation is fully going to be either for prospects. Obviously, there's probably not going to be like the traditional kind of combine, but hopefully he's been working on some of these pieces. And I just think, he was someone that a year ago, people thought was that number 1 pick. So I think it's hard to kind of fully disregard that unless super proven otherwise. And I don't think he's number 1, but I don't think he's that, he's going to go pretty high. So I think at number 6, if you still see him, I think it's worth just grabbing.
All right. At number 7, we have Detroit Pistons, and the player that I would take for the Pistons would be, I'll go with Devin Vassell, and he's a wing out of Florida State, has been a good shooter, really improved as a pull-up shooter this past year as well. Excellent team defender, just has great awareness on that side of the floor. And I think also has some things to build on as an offensive player, at least improved as a ball handler. Doesn't get to the line a ton, but still shoots well enough. And you just feel like that projection could really be there. And then just his overall court awareness, those seem to be like things you can build on. Maybe not like the highest upside pick for Detroit, but you still do see quite a bit of upside in Vassell. So, yeah, that's who I'll have Detroit taking at 7. And then hopefully they can even build further that next year because they still seem to be a ways away.
Yeah, they're going to be a regular lottery people. So I hope whoever is their representative, has a good selection of suits. Coming up next, we have that New York Knicks. So this is always a highly
got a tough one.
highly thought of pick. And again, nothing you can do is right, because worst case, they take the right player and they boo him, or they take the wrong player and, it never works out. But I'm going to go with Tyrese Halliburton, point guard, Iowa State. You're looking at, 6'5" point guard, a little bit big, a little skinny, but, a little bit bigger point guard. And maybe he's just somebody that can really, build himself up to be that leader for this team for hopefully the future, whatever that looks like. Like right now it's, Julius Randle and, some other guys, but hopefully they have the point guard that they could tie their franchise around. And in a couple of years, he can develop into, a little bit, maybe a little bit better shooter, but definitely someone who could pass, right now. So he can come in and be a distributor.
Yeah, shooting, like spot-up shooting has been a strength for him. It's just a pull-up game, getting to the free throw line, creating off of the dribble. He seems like more of a linking player and secondary playmaker than somebody who you want as your full-time point guard. And if you're New York, you're kind of worried about that because they had a really tough time kind of creating a lot of things last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, he certainly is a guy who sees both sides of the floor really well. Kind of gets attacked on ball at times due to his lack of strength on defense, but still I feel like has some real awareness on that end of the floor. And yeah, I'm guessing he probably falls around that area and could be somebody that you may give a try next to RJ Barrett. But yeah, I'm guessing New York fans may not be blown away, but be prepared.
Well, it's also either way, they're not going to be happy, and their ownership's pretty terrible. So
Yeah,
they'll get what they get.
that does seem to be the issue. Yeah. So at number 9, we have the Washington Wizards, and I need to think about this one. Whew. I will go with, you know what? I'm going to take the flyer. I'm going to go with Alexei Pokusevsky here. And let's just go for high upside. Why not? I know Washington, I think Washington has next to no chance of doing this, but he's a 7-footer who moves extraordinarily well, has some potential shooting off motion, can handle the ball in the open floor, really good transition passer, has rim protection potential. The body is, of course, a concern, but and obviously he hasn't played at the highest level yet. You worry about how long it's actually going to take him to come over and contribute in the NBA, but just so much talent. And in a draft where there aren't too many high upside players, he could be enough high upside play that, if Washington really wanted to roll the dice, like, why not?
Well, just he's really all of you see him, higher, in this lottery kind of range, but then you see him lower in the. So what makes you think the difference that he gets into that top 10, just on that like potential upside?
I think there's little to no chance, but if the chance was there, I would say, absolutely upside. It's just he could be somebody that a lot of teams regret on passing. He's just there's so much talent there. He's the youngest player in the draft. He can shoot, handle, and pass as a big man, and he has defensive instincts as well. So, yeah, yes, obviously it's a flyer, and there is a lot of possible downside there. It would be a scary pick, no doubt.
Yeah, it's a bold move.
Yeah, he played for Olympiacos in Greek. So he played mainly in the Greek A2. And when you compare his statistics there to Giannis, obviously very different players. But, yeah, it's something you at least have to think about, especially in a draft that almost seems to compare to 2013 in the amount of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a draft where I don't know who's gonna come out and be that player. Like, oh, we really missed out on. It's hard to really see, because I think the overall depth of this draft is pretty low, I guess, to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really present a lot of things you're super excited about. But number 10, we got Phoenix. They really killed it in the bubble, 8-0, made that push for the playoffs. They have some, bright spots, kind of good things to kind of look upon. I'm probably just going to, add somebody that can kind of help Devin Booker out in some different ways. And I know that they do have Kelly Oubre. They do have, some other guys, but I'm going to go with Isaac Okoro out of Auburn. Still, pretty young, 19, but, athletic, defense. I think these are things, like, they have that offense from Devin Booker. They have Cam Johnson's proven himself to be, able to shoot at this NBA level. You have Ayton as your center. I think it just gives you somebody else to kind of be scrappy and hopefully just give them that last piece that they need to finally get over that hump and get in the playoffs.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think Isaac is going to be a guy who eventually is a rotation player in the league. You hope that the shooting works out, but he has a lot of other factors that should make him contribute right away.
Yeah, and I think at the jump, like, you hope, shooting, you hope always gets improved, but it's like, if you can be defensive and scrappy, you already have the score. Like, Phoenix isn't looking for somebody. Like, Devin Booker's going to be chucking up shots.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, you always want that.
You want to spread the court. Yeah, no, totally.
And, you have Mikal Bridges, you have Cam Johnson, both played really good roles. But I think that them adding another wing is not completely out of the realm of possibility. And I think if Okoro's there, but it might be worth a shot. And now we are at the number 11 pick. I'm going to go with Patrick Williams out of Florida State. I just think he's a possible combo forward, probably more of a 4, but has some potential as a shooter, really good athlete, did a great job on defense at Florida State. Didn't play necessarily the hugest role, but it seemed like he just got better as the season progressed. Shot well from the free throw line, didn't shoot exceptional from the three-point range, but there's reason to believe that he stretches out his range and adds to it. And that's who I will take for San Antonio.
Sounds pretty good there. And again, San Antonio's. This is the first time they haven't made the playoffs in 22 years. So, Pop's probably not going to want to be back in the lottery again for another 22 years. So
I think he's going to want to be back next year, and then hoping that he lands somebody that helps him stay out of the lottery for a while.
Yeah, because they might have to, make some moves, either LaMarcus, DeMar, something's going to change. But yeah, like they're a team that's not used to being in this position. So hopefully they're getting someone that helps them get back out, so they're not in this lottery conversation again. Because unfamiliar territory for a team that's been one of the premier franchises in the NBA. Number 12, I'm going with a team that is less prestigious in its NBA tradition, and that's the Sacramento Kings. Obviously Shaq once called them the Sacramento Queens.
And then he had a stake in them.
Yeah, and now he's got a part of it. Also, they have an owner that thought it was a good idea to play 4-man defense and just have one guy standing under the other team's basket because it worked with his daughter's 10-year-old team.
Yeah.
So that is something that, is a little nutty, but I'm sitting here and I'm looking, at my board, and I'm looking around. I'm kind of shocked this guy is still available, and I'm going to go with the National Player of the Year, Obi Toppin.
Obi Toppin. Somebody I thought of taking my last couple picks, but I think the reason that Obi Toppin would slide down, and I'm guessing he goes, and my general concern about Obi Toppin is the defensive end. And I'm not exactly sure who he guards in the NBA.
But he could be the guy that stands under the other basket.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Sacramento's the ideal situation for him.
Yeah, he can just put the ball in the basket. He's good at that. He's proven that in college.
Definitely. Well, he was tremendous this year in college. He is definitely, and this is going to get beaten into the ground, but older for a redshirt sophomore. He's the age of a senior. But yeah, he would, at the same time, while you're saying, he should be doing this, he was the National Player of the Year.
He proved
one of the best teams
he
in
score.
The nation. Was a great scorer. In the amount of ways that he scored on the floor, as a cutter, led the nation in dunks. So super vertical athlete. The lateral quickness is what I think worries some people. But yeah, he's also a really good passer. So the offensive end of the floor, he's a stud. Defensive end of the floor, you're just wondering if he's going to possibly end up hurting you. Not necessarily the longest player either.
No, totally. That's definitely a concern point for him, and that's why I think he moves down. But I think Sacramento's a good situation for him. You got your point guard. You have De'Aaron Fox. You have Buddy Hield. Bagley, we still don't know what we're getting.
Exactly.
And
playing them next to each other would be tough, but you'd have two great vertical athletes, that's for sure.
But I think sometimes, you look at teams coming down the stretch, I think about even the Portland Trailblazers in the playoffs, you can't have enough big guys you're comfortable bringing into the game because it's pretty tough when there's a drop-off from somebody who's a capable scorer to just bringing in a guy because he's tall and can kind of play some defense, and get a few rebounds. That doesn't really cut it for me in the playoffs. And obviously that's why you see a lot of teams, when they have these injury woes, I just don't think you can have enough depth of somebody that you could bring in who's big, who can kind of score. I mean, I even looked at New Orleans Pelicans this year with Jahlil Okafor. What he proved in that last audition game is he wouldn't be a horrible guy to have on your bench because worst case scenario, if everyone else is out, he could at least come in and score.
Well, the thing with that is, yes, obviously offense is fantastic. The thing with Jaleel is it seems like he gives up about as much on defense. Like that's the big issue. And yes, like if Obi is scoring and they're just flat out outscoring the other team, that's fantastic. But if he, let's say, is on the floor and he's having a rough shooting game or anything like that, or let's say he's scoring, but the other players he's playing against happen to have these incredible shooting numbers against him on a consistent basis. That's where you really worry. And that's the reason why Jahlil Okafor is considered to be what he is considered.
Yeah, like a middle, like
out of that draft.
Not that pick that he was, but yeah, like hopefully Obi Toppin could get a little defense. But I think Sacramento
and certainly has more of a repertoire outside of like Jalil's fantastic around the basket. Obi has a little more to his game potentially.
Yeah, no, we'll see. I think Sacramento would be a good situation there because again, like I think you have some pieces. They're pretty. I think De'Aaron Fox is a good point guard leader. I think he can get a team to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to see him do it again. Just Marvin Bagley, we don't know what we're getting. He's always kind of had that high hope, but is he just another kind of upper middle big guy? Who's not all-star level, but he's okay.
Yeah, and I guess if you're taking Obi, you're hoping that Marvin can potentially play center.
Yeah, totally. That's again matching up against a lot of teams. I mean, sometimes you look at some of the teams out there, centers kind of either not playing or just getting outrun.
Mm-hmm.
I look at again back to Portland, like what they had to do in that series. Like when you put Whiteside and Nurkic on at the same time, it's just too slow. Like you can't do it. And even at points of the game, like that energy is just not there. So it's like smaller, big, strong.
Crazy that they had those two guys and were getting like out rebound.
Oh no, totally. It's insane, but it's like you look at them, you're like, yeah, it's just right now you want 5 guys that can, spread the court and shoot it. And it's like, oh, you're getting another center. So you have 4, maybe 3 guys. You take 2 guys off that are shooters, you're getting outrun. I mean, I think small ball is, small ball to a point, like where you still kind of have someone like Marvin Bagley. Like I think it works. And I mean, back in his EYBL high school days when he played for that what was the team there? Phoenix, whatever.
Family. Yeah.
Family. Yeah. Family with the PH.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were terrible. They were not your ideal.
They were familiar ranking of them at the bottom of the league.
Yeah, like I think you're like they're the family you're left with, not the family that you choose. But he was a center there, So but it like slightly different scenario, but
yeah. Out of necessity, and
he was like the point
here he'd be out of necessity as well.
And they won 1 game, I think, in the EYBL.
They won 2.
But with like,
and they won 3 games in the Peach Jam.
With a guy that's ranked number 1.
They just got put into the Peach Jam. But obviously it was kind of a rough go of the squad. But very much a showcase for Marvin. But yeah, let's move on. And my pick at number 13, New Orleans Pelicans. I'm going to go with the player I have highest on my board, and that is Cole Anthony. I still have faith in Cole Anthony. I think Cole Anthony can create his own shot. I think he's going to be a good pull-up shooter. I don't think he's a total mess on defense. There was a lot to like about him coming into this season. He looked great in the Hoop Summit game. He looked not necessarily as wonderful in the practices. He played really well in the McDonald's All-American game. He played well in Oak Hill. And then these past 2 seasons of EYBL, he was one of the most efficient players in the league. And EYBL has usually been a pretty nice precursor to how your NBA sample will look. He had like abysmal spacing this season in North Carolina. He is somebody that I just feel, doesn't necessarily have to have the ball in his hands all the time, doesn't necessarily have to be your primary initiator. And when you have a team like New Orleans who have a few guys you can get the ball to, but you add a shooter potentially like Cole Anthony, I think that could be a really nice fit for them there. And just as a guy who can create his own pull-up shot, and that's kind of a thing that they seem to be missing right now.
But what are your thoughts on that fit though? With you still have Lonzo, you still have Drew Holiday.
I think he can play next to either of them.
Yeah, you like that kind of.
Yeah.
I've honestly liked Oklahoma City, you know, in the spurts where they have Schroeder, Paul, and Shea.
Absolutely. And yes, like obviously those
Shea's
are
bigger.
very, very different players. And like, yeah, like is Cole Anthony going to be on the level of either of them or any of them as NBA players? Like they're all very rare. Yeah, just having that guard lineup, and even like in Dallas, like when they play like the two small guards with Luka, like that, it's a nice lineup, and it can really get things going on offense. And then if Cole can guard point guards, which I think there's a good chance that he will, I think that could be a really nice thing moving forward. And I just feel like he can come in and play a nice role for a team right away. Yes, he's a small guard. He's a bit one-dimensional. He's not the best decision maker. But I feel like even that improved, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and take the role on him at 13.
And it's just a great situation where you could literally just throw the ball up in the air. And this guy.
That's what you hope.
This guy named Zion is just gonna catch it and throw it in the hoop. So yeah, I think New Orleans so close to the playoffs. And obviously that's I think what the league probably wanted with the bubble was like.
Yeah, I think more continuity, and they're still a young team.
They're young, and these guys are like locked in, like young and locked in. Like, you know, you're gonna have Ingram hopefully for a while. Drew Holiday, you know, still playing at a high level, but you know, middle to towards the end of his career, but still great. Lonzo's young. You know, they're a super, super exciting team. But at the 14th spot, the last pick of the lottery here, we have a team that it's so funny. They're so good, but they've done so many crazy trades throughout the years that they're always in the lottery. You know, getting these guys that like you look at their, you know, based on record, shouldn't be able to get, but that's what's keeping them afloat at this high level. So we got Boston. You know, they're up right, you know, as of this recording, September 1st, 2020, they're up 2-0 in the, you know, Eastern Conference semifinals over, you know, a different but defending champion Toronto Raptors team. You got, I think, you know, Jason Tatum is your dude moving forward, but you still have Kemba. Very, very interesting situation. I am going to just keep it going with my love of a player that can get out and shoot. So we're going with Aaron Nesmith, shooting guard, small forward. Just another wing you could throw out on the court, space out, and let the ball go. Because eventually they're going to have to, you know, people are going to leave Boston. You know, they're not going to be able to lock down and hold down everybody that they currently have.
But the thing is, their best two players are basically going to be like these. I guess you can have Tatum playing the 4 and Jaylen Brown. They just locked in the Brown has that extension.
I think Tatum finds a spot at the 4, ideally, especially in this scenario. And, you know, obviously Gordon Hayward probably he's the first one you would want to be out, but eventually it's going to be that point.
Last year you take Romeo Langford in the lottery and he can do kind of like everything except shoot. Yeah. And this time you take the guy who just shoots.
and honestly, that is such a good role for these teams. Like I look at LeBron and the way he likes to play. Like ideally, he loves Anthony Davis, obviously, but the other 3 guys could care less as long as you can make the shots that he gives you.
Shoot. Yeah.
Let him go in, and that's why he's had those guys throughout his career that he's like literally kept with him, like his Ray Allen, his Mike Miller. Then you have Kyle Korver for a year. Like guys, it's just like, I'm going to take in everybody. I'm going to go strong to the basket. You better be there. You better make your shot. And I think you can't go wrong with that kind of look.
I think you could definitely go wrong with it, but at the same time, I see exactly where you're going with the Nesmith thing there. He was a high volume 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
And he, like when you just look at his raw numbers and especially as a spot up shooter, he was fantastic. So certainly has a lot of potential there and absolutely has a role because he's going to be able to shoot.
Yeah.
And you worry about some of the other aspects, but he has size. He has like a 6'10", a reported 6'10", 6'11" wingspan. He certainly has a strong body, and maybe you just hope he adds a little bit more to his game. But yeah, and with the Celtics, you're kind of playing with house money. And then you have these 3 first-round picks, so there's a chance that you can trade this pick and you can get value for a guy who stands out among a draft where you're kind of looking for shooters, and you don't necessarily have somebody who's like you have very few people who are like, brain dead, like this is what they're going to do, shooters, and he's one of them.
Yeah, and honestly, like trading's totally possible because that's what keeps Danny Ainge and keeps this machine moving. And obviously, a lot of teams are going to want to trade down or possibly out to try to hop back in next year in a much stronger, better draft class. Because they pick at the end of the first round, and I doubt they're going to use 3 first-round picks for the year. It just doesn't seem like super.
No, it seems very implausible.
Yeah, because it's just like you're adding 3 guaranteed contracts. It just doesn't, it isn't the move.
They'll have maybe like a couple open roster spots, but yeah, it seems like they're either likely candidate to stash somebody or to trade a couple picks and maybe try and trade out and get a projected late first rounder next year or do something like that. Get a future asset.
Yeah, if like Pokashevsky is available at that spot, like totally, like that's ideal for them because they don't need anybody today. I mean, they're already proving they're steps away from the finals. Like they
want that next step to possibly get there
and
then make some noise.
But this year the East is pretty open, and it's they knocked out Toronto. It's pretty open for them.
Yeah, the West is going to be I feel a whole different beast once you get to the NBA Finals.
Totally. But you hopefully have that at least. Not that any playoff run is easier, but it's not as grueling in that Eastern Conference playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to a team that got knocked out of the Eastern Conference playoffs in the first round in a gentleman's sweep, and that was the Orlando Magic. They are picking 15th in the draft, and the player that I will have them select is Kyra Lewis Jr. out of Alabama. I think that first off, they need a point guard, and Kyra was somebody who had a great freshman season as somebody who was too young to even be eligible for the 2019 draft. Took big steps this year, really fast with the ball, has a lot of potential as a decision maker, showed some nice flashes as a shooter as well, can get the defense off balance, can get to the basket. You worry a bit about his size and all of those things, but he is somebody that I feel could really thrive in Orlando and just probably goes in there and plays quite a few minutes right away.
And this leaves me in this position that I always hate to be in, but I'm 16, Portland Trailblazers, a team that
we're holding our breath for this one.
I sadly know
large Portland audience here at Viseland.
It's a team I sadly know very well. And it's like there's a couple different needs that step out very obviously, which is like, a 3 or 4, and just to kind of give them a bigger person, hopefully to go to, other than Dame CJ sometimes. So it puts me in a really difficult spot. So if I really have to go on the Blazers, I think I'm going to try for RJ Hampton.
Okay.
You're going with somebody that again, he's pretty high on some boards. He's not the biggest guy, but maybe Simons has kind of seen his run come to an end. Gary Trent slides into that 3 spot. And then this is that other guy that you could bring off the bench. He's got a 6'4", but he's got a big wingspan, 8'4" standing reach. And let's just see if hopefully shot selection is improved and decent, and hopefully he develops into that player that they wanted Simons to be. Maybe they find Simons a home elsewhere. But ideally, you'd love this certain player, but unfortunately that player doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Especially at this point of the draft.
Yeah, it'd be tough to find, especially with all the players that we have off of the board right now. But I think RJ Hampton is a likely guy that they target there. Really quick. And he certainly, like, when you're just talking about a guy who has potential blow by speed, and if you work on a few tweaks of his game and hopefully consistency as a shooter, not the best decision maker, but there's just a lot of talent there. And the Blazers certainly could use more talent everywhere.
Yeah. Like ideally, you'd want some sort of kind of
backup guard spots,
front court guy, but it's just not really.
You need more off the bench for sure.
And I think they take a swing in free agency at somebody on a 1 year, maybe mid-level that's trying to prove something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you just kind of are hoping that maybe they bring back like a certain somebody at a minimum salary. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling on that is I'd love Melo to come back. I feel the same thing's going to happen to him next year. Like, I don't think the market's there, and then some team is going to be falling short of their expectation. Decent chance it's Portland again, and then they're going to be like, oh, we need somebody else to kind of score. And he was, proving again defensive. He's not going to be defensive player of the year. But
nobody was trying.
But he tries, he hustles, he swears every time he gets a rebound, which I love. That passion for the game, and the fade
like a nice 4 swear words a game.
And the fadeaway in the post still kind of works. He still got it.
Yeah.
In spurts.
That mid-range.
Yeah, no, totally. But he was.
But yeah, certainly like the Blazers needed somebody that could create some offense.
More and more in the qualifying games, he was shooting the three a little bit, but yeah, again, that's not going to be his game either. But yeah,
right. If he can knock down an open three, that's even better.
Yeah,
like, the days you kind of remember the days of Melo playing for Team USA when the 22-foot line was so much better for him.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's in his stepping into it wheelhouse.
Yeah. So Minnesota has another pick at 17. I am going to go with another backcourt player here, just high on my board. Still have a lot of faith in him as well. Tyrus Maxi. He played for Kentucky this past year. He did not necessarily shoot lights out from long range. It seemed like for whatever reason, he seemed to play really well against the best teams and then kind of struggle against some of the lesser teams. That's at least what it seemed to be. But yeah, only shoots 29% from three, but shoots a good percentage from the line, always is known how to score, was really good in EYBL, was good for USA. I guess it would have been U18. Yeah, he played for the USA U18s, I believe, a couple years ago, and did really well there. And he is somebody that I feel can play next to LaMelo Ball, even play with Jarrett Culver and kind of make things interesting. Gives a different feel of defensive intensity compared to LaMelo Ball and might be able to kind of light a fire there. And just has a lot of scoring potential, excellent body control and balance as a finisher. And from everything I've heard, very coachable. Not necessarily like an out-of-this-world athlete, but I think there are certainly things in terms of body control and hand-eye coordination that are really stand out with him. And so while he's not like the best run and jump guy, I still think there are a lot of things to like about Tyrus Maxi.
No, definitely. I think that would be like a super good pick for them. Because again, they're in this position in the draft where they get 2 chances to add guys to their roster to hopefully contribute.
Yes, sir.
Number 18, I'm coming in with Dallas love Luca. He kind of need, like ideally they need kind of an enforcery type, but I don't know if that's
Yeah, Bobby.
they got no, yeah, Boban, my favorite player. He and Steven Adams are like my top two guys for like off the court coolness. But I'm gonna go with Sadiq Bey.
Okay.
Villanova, again, scrappy, high energy, and can kind of shoot the rock. So gives just Luca somebody else to hopefully go out there and hit some shots when he is very much under pressure.
Most def.
Because I think their front court, you got Porzingis, it gets a little crowded there pretty quickly. And again, I just don't know adding a center is the best thing to do in the draft if you're not super sold on it. So get guys that can, present some skill set to kind of help out.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. No, I think I think this kind of just gives it somebody else to help them hopefully get over that hump. So next year, Luka is putting up these same games and they're getting, wins in the series.
Yeah, I think at 18, you're just kind of hoping anybody that could possibly
do something,
fill in a few minutes.
Yeah,
and,
you just need
make a couple shots, not have to take a lot of playmaking duties or anything like that. And certainly, I think a guy they could be looking at. Moving on to 19, I will take Desmond Bane for the New Jersey Nets, or not New Jersey Nets, the Brooklyn Nets.
Brooklyn Nets.
And,
Brooklyn some respect.
So Joe Harris is a free agent. Luckily, this happened on the Hoop Spy podcast I was on, and my friend Spencer Perlman took Desmond Bane to the Brooklyn Nets. I think his rationale is legit. He's on my board here, and I think that he's one of the best shooters in the draft. Can shoot in a variety of ways. Not the greatest physical attributes, and he's I think 6'4", 6'5" with a chalk wingspan, but certainly was a talented scorer at Texas Christian, and will hopefully be able to contribute right away. Was a senior, one of the best seniors available in the draft, and somebody who, if you don't get Joe Harris, which I know is going to be a priority for Brooklyn, possibly a guy that can come in and perform some of that same role. Probably not the same level, but at least somebody that you have potential to add as a role player at 19, and that is a sweet sight at this point in the draft.
Yeah, totally. Someone that you think can kind of contribute. So I'm coming in here at 20, Miami Heat.
Oh, yeah.
Solid,
Looking good.
Solid roster, but I'm gonna go take a bit of a swing. I'm gonna go Theo Maledon from France.
And what are your reasons for taking Theo at 20?
It's they're at a position where they have Goran right now, but again, Goran,
he's likely gone. Yeah.
Yeah, likely gone or on his way out.
He's a free agent.
Then that probably answers that question. Then
yeah.
I thought he said.
I think it looks like Miami is going after Victor Oladipo or potentially somebody else that's a big money player. They just have that kind of situation where they were one of the highest salaries in the league this year, but they have a ton of money coming off the books this offseason. And you think that they are at least in a position to possibly add a second, all-star level guy. And then I think the ultimate goal is to try and get Giannis a year from now.
Yeah, when he's available. But I love Jimmy. I love what they present today. I love Jimmy Butler. Again, on my off the court coolness factor, Jimmy Butler ranks pretty high as well. But I just think it's worth trying to bring in a point guard that can really pass the ball. He's got pretty decent size at his position. In that 6'4" range for a point guard. I mean, that's something that's always just intriguing to see in the NBA, and hopefully he can just come in, be a facilitator for this team that's pretty established, doing pretty well on their own.
Yeah. Plus they've been doing a really good job at coaching shooting, and that's, I think, one of the upside plays for Maledon is his potential as a shooter. So yeah, it certainly seems like he could another potential pick around here. if he doesn't go a little bit later. But yeah, he's kind of been all over the place. He has a pretty wide range.
Yeah, and you've seen
Likely ending in the first round, but yeah.
You see him, later. But I think it's worth giving it a shot to see. I think he's at this point in the draft, one of the better lead point guards available.
All right. At the 21st pick, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. It seemed like they had the world on a string a couple years ago, and the process had worked. They fired a little bit early. They did some interesting free agent signings this past offseason that did not necessarily fit the best players on their roster. You were kind of hoping to play that anti-small ball and have a guy in the Eastern Conference who was great at guarding Joel Embiid, playing next to Joel Embiid. But yeah, you have in the meanwhile a few guys playing out of position, and making tons of money in the process of that. The guy that I will have them selecting is Josh Green out of Arizona. He's always been a player that I've been pretty high on since I had the chance to see him at the past couple hoop summits. He is a fantastic athlete out of Australia, played at IMG Academy, and boy, did he have trouble finishing around the basket this year. Like, he was kind of a mess there, but I think he still has some potential to shoot. He's a really good passer, and he is a really good on-ball defender, and also gives you some utility off ball. I just think has nice awareness on both ends of the floor, and you isn't going to be somebody that's necessarily helping you much off the bounce. But I think playing next to Ben Simmons, another Australian, it could be a really nice. And then you just want to get him in transition, and hopefully, that speed and athleticism, and then the awareness on the floor work out in your favor. And unlike Ben Simmons, you at least have some confidence that Josh Green is going to shoot for you.
Yeah, no, and that's what they desperately need, especially with that being such sort of a missing part of Ben Simmons' game, is that reliability to really shoot. Be dependent on it. So it's, definitely, I think that would definitely be great. 22, I've got Denver. Really tough, because you look at Denver and you're like, what do you get the team that really has a lot of things and a lot of young talent, because we still don't know what, Michael Porter Jr., obviously I have to say it as an Oregon Duck, Bol presented some interesting things in some possible scenarios, but, obviously not your guy, but you got Jokic and Jamal. That's the core of your team. I mean, everyone else can kind of come go, but those are the two guys you're going to hang on to for hopefully forever if you're Denver. So I'm gonna take. I'm like, I look at my board and I'm like, it's so hard to see who you really think would fit in with what they're doing.
Go with the best guy, man. That's what Denver's been doing.
Yeah, that's what I think they're going to do as well. And again, I think if you look at the one position on their roster that they can replace, in the starting lineup, I would say that's probably power forward. I'm going to go with.
I think Michael Porter Jr. is the power forward of the future, but
maybe if they move out Plumlee, but then is he power forward? Is he gonna?
He's a power forward, in my mind. Yeah, I think that's the best defensive position for him, and then offensively, I just think he provides a lot of matchup issues there as well.
Well, I'm gonna have Denver, taking another swing, because they seem to be pretty good at that. We're going with Precious Achiuwa, Memphis. I know always meets some skepticism, but he's a bit, size, athleticism. It's worth the risk. It's not really a risk at this point. It's just worth, trying to bring somebody into your front court that could athletically, physically be on the court.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you listened to the Hoop Spy mock at all, Jace, but Precious was actually who Spencer eventually drafted when he had the 22 pick for Denver.
Denver.
Um,
It's just
and it's kind of like so Jeremy Grant, I think, has a player option, I believe, but he there's a chance that Jeremy Grant could be gone, and
and I always know how you feel about Mason.
You ultimately hope that Precious can do some of the same things. Obviously, not that level of shooter.
No, and
doubtful for him to get to that level, but certainly, like when it comes to athleticism, when it comes to physical attributes, when it comes to energy, Precious is going to get a shot to play in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think with Denver, you don't need the shooter. You got Jamal, you got Jokic. They're doing that shooting for you.
You always say that, and yet I feel like you still don't want somebody that like just ruins your spacing.
Oh no, totally. But sometimes I think you need a big guy that can rebound, shove some people, and really commit 6 fouls.
Yeah,
tough.
There's still a position for that.
And that's one at a time on the court. It's not like I don't think you need 4 of those guys, but
yeah, you hope you don't have to.
Yeah.
All right. 23, the recently eliminated Utah Jazz. I am going to take Grant Riller out of College of Charleston. I think that he is just another playmaker they can kind of add to the fold. He may kind of do what Jordan Clarkson does, except maybe with potentially better finishing, as he was a fantastic finisher in college. Really great athlete. Brings that kind of nice scorer off the bench at a tremendous value here. And I think that, has potential to play next to Donovan Mitchell, has potential to play next to Mike Conley. Just a guard that can come off the bench and score. And as we saw, at times, Utah, it seemed like Clarkson over the games 1 through 4, maybe like a little 5, was doing a great job scoring. And then after a while, the defense that was being given up was too much. Grant Riller, the jury's still kind of out on that. He seems to be pretty good on ball, still kind of struggles with team concepts. But you just hope that he maybe, with a player like Rudy Gobert, with some other players backing him up, isn't necessarily asked to have that kind of scary role in Utah. So, yeah, he's just somebody that I feel can give that nice offensive punch and would be somebody that I think is just a good player to draft here. And so I have Grant Riller going to the Utah Jazz.
24, Milwaukee Bucks. I'm going to go someone who I think can, hopefully just really push the ball for them. Their point guards are getting a little older. I'm going to go with someone that, at a time was ranked super high. Obviously, college probably didn't help him as much, but I'm going to go with Nico Mannion.
Okay.
I think, shooting and just maybe someone that can, get out on the break, run it with Giannis. Like just, really put it.
Really good off the ball, too.
Yeah, push
and then, he didn't shoot extraordinarily well in college, but you feel like there's still potential there. Obviously wasn't a great finisher, has some defensive concerns, but yeah, there's still a lot to like offensively from Nico, and is a guy who could also be another handler. And yeah, I could see him playing next to Giannis. I could see him being somebody that Milwaukee could be interested in.
Yeah, because I think it just makes sense, because at this point you're not going to find the perfect player in the draft, that could do everything. But
rarely,
I think you're trying to find that potential.
Indeed. So Mannion off the board. I am going to go with Leandro Bolmaro to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And he is almost certainly going to take a year or two to come over. I think that's fine. I'm guessing by then, one of their guards will be out of the picture, and he's somebody that I just think has a lot of potential as either a complementary guard or somebody that can, you want the ball in his hands, a really good passer, a good ball handler, and then puts fantastic pressure on the ball as a defender. The shooting is still a concern, but if he were to come over and they were still to have that guard roster, I still think he would make things very interesting. And they're a team that I think might be willing to wait and have a guy like Leandro Balmaro playing next to potentially Shai Gilgeous-Alexander down the line.
Yeah, I think waiting for them,
Two bigger guards.
And waiting for them, is definitely can make some sense. Coming in at 26 with Boston. Again, this is the third time.
You're going to be Boston out by the end of this one.
Yeah, second time out of three, they're on there. Like, do they need all these players? No. But I'm gonna take a swing in the front court as someone, again, ranked very, very high. If we look at a mock draft a year ago, much higher position, has some potential things. I'm gonna go with Vernon Carey from Duke, son of Vernon Carey, the football player. I think,
Son of Vernon Carey.
He's a great player for the U. His son obviously chose a different sport, went a different direction, obviously different body type.
He had a great season in college. He really did.
Yes,
there are just concerns about him in his translation to the NBA, mainly defensively. But yeah, I felt was one of the best freshmen in the NCAA. Was one of the best players in when you look at per minute statistics, just raw statistics, putting up good numbers, shooting well. Not as well as you would have thought from the free throw line. Didn't take a huge volume of 3-pointers, and that's kind of one of the things where you're wondering how much he's going to shoot. But I think having a chance to see him multiple times, somebody who's a really intriguing offensive player, who has just tremendous defensive concerns. But yeah, he's another one of those guys who, if the offense can just outweigh those defensive concerns and his guard position, then he could be somebody that plays in the league. I think a lot of people are just kind of feeling, I think possibly wrongly, that he's just kind of out of the league based on the archetype that you want out of your big man right now. But I still think there's some shooting potential there.
No, definitely. It's worth the chance at this point in the draft for him especially.
Yeah, and Boston needs a big.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a Boston fan who almost certainly will despise this pick, but it's one you can trade. I still think Vernon could be a first-round pick. It's certainly a possibility. We have number 27, New York Knicks. Looking at my board, I am going to go with Tyrell Terry. He's another guy who you're not completely sure is going to be that primary handler for you, but he is someone who I think showed a lot of flashes as a shooter. Defensively, there are certainly concerns. He's not the strongest player. He has pretty much a chalk wingspan as well. Supposedly grew a little bit since he entered college, but still was playing at maybe $165, but just shot lights out this year. 41 or so percent from three, 89% from the line. And also did a really commendable job as a finisher. He is someone who I think still has some upside. And the Knicks doubling up on these guards, maybe not necessarily the exact guys that you want in these spots, but I think both of them have potential to shoot and at least add an element of stretching the floor that they may have lacked last year.
No, definitely for them. I definitely think that would be huge, just to kind of give them a little something. I'm coming in. Well, the Knicks need more than something usually, but
Yeah.
again, late in the first round, you get what you can. I'm going to be picking 28 is the Lakers, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and a bunch of other people. Everyone else, you look at their roster. There's a lot of players that if they walked away, I don't know who's going to be crying, but they kind of need someone to. LeBron likes shooters, but he likes fast tempo as well. So I'm thinking I'm going to get him the point guard that he can, kind of hopefully rely on, someone who's quick, speedy. I'm going to go with Devin Dawson.
Oh, okay.
Just,
not necessarily the shooter that I was
not
thinking
the shooter,
here.
but just again, Rondo's not the shooter either.
Yeah.
And what they currently have on the roster, but just someone who's quick and can kind of set a tempo.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, he was a great player in college this year. There are a lot of people that are quite high on Devin Dawson, and he seems like a guy who, if you're looking for that playmaker, if you're looking for that guy who potentially drives the basket with some force and can kick it out, that could be somebody that you're looking at. And
that's the thing. LeBron and AD don't mind also being recipients of driving kick. So again, I think setting up a faster pace, and I think really having like a lead point guard on the Lakers is kind of something that they don't really have at this moment. So hopefully, like someone that can start a point guard, and you can be.
I think most people are looking for like a shooter here, but yeah, that could be another element, especially if you think Devin Dotson's ahead of any other point guard on the roster at this point.
And then LeBron, he finds people in free agency. Like people take, lesser deals.
That's what you hope.
To come. So he'll find some schmo who can shoot.
All right. For the Toronto Raptors at 29, I'm going to choose the highest player left on my board, and that is Xavier Tillman out of Michigan State. They have both of their centers as free agents this year. And Xavier, not necessarily the biggest guy, but has been one of the best players in college basketball the past couple of years, is an absolute load to move in the post, kind of almost plays like a Marc Gasol of college basketball the last few years without the shooting, but he is somebody that you at least have hope for there, and then is just so good at doing so many of the little things. Excellent passer, really good post defender, and smart basketball player. So a lot of people are kind of looking at the Raptors here and thinking they'll take somebody with big upside that they can develop. I'm giving them a guy who has just put up results, and I think also still can be developed as well. So Xavier Tillman to the Raptors at 29.
Yeah, and Michigan State guys, that's always a good, good college background, always kind of helps, hopefully, for that NBA transition. So I'm with Boston again. So this is their third pick. Hopefully they traded one of them, but it's the end of the first round. The last guy you're going to give a guaranteed contract to. But I'm looking at my board. I'm going to go at this point with a guy I have high. I've been able to watch him. Obviously, I watch a little bit more Pac-12 just for full transparency, being a West Coast person. But I saw this guy and his body. I thought, he's a big player. Is he the player? He's a player that kind of probably another era might have been better for him. But I actually like Isaiah Stewart. I just think, just a big body presence. He was getting 17 points a game, 8 rebounds as a freshman. Coming in there, he averaged a couple blocks as well. And he's that big guy that's really going to frustrate the opposing big, hopefully. But he's a little bit of a below the rim kind of, he's not like Anthony Davis or,
he lacks lift.
Yeah, he lacks lift.
We'll put it straight up. He lacks lift, but he's
got a big,
when you're talking about straight up production in college, he did a good job. He was basically, they had Noah Dickerson the last few years in Washington, and Isaiah was asked to do Noah's role, and I felt like he out-Noah'd Noah. But is it ultimately a role that's going to succeed in the NBA? That's a major concern.
Yeah, and this
Was his defense hidden a bit, like the 2 blocks per game? Was that hidden with him kind of being in the middle of that zone? But like when you're talking about a guy who's strong, character is always something that people talk about with Isaiah Stewart, and it's just a guy that many rave about. Every time I saw him, he played his ass off.
Yeah.
And even the 2 games I went to this year where I could see the legitimate NBA concerns, and like I'm concerned with him as a rim protector.
No, totally, because he's not the big center. He's like,
yeah,
he's more of that. He's stationary.
He's not really challenging a lot. Like like he does have a 7'4" wingspan, and like his standing reach isn't crazy bad or anything like that. It's actually like I think kind of almost maybe a little below average, but nothing crazy. He just doesn't get a lot of lift. And then when it comes to decision making on both ends of the floor, a little slow there as well. But he just seems to put up numbers. Like, and that's what he does. He puts up numbers. He gets garbage baskets, and then he shot well from the free throw line. And he didn't take a ton of shots, but didn't shoot incredibly poorly or anything like that. So you could see him possibly having potential there. You worry about the low sample size there. You worry about him as a passer. The high turnover numbers. I get why people are very down on Isaiah Stewart.
Oh, totally.
But I still think that there's enough intrigue there on him just being strong and putting up those numbers.
Yeah, put him in the game.
You're willing to give him a chance and see if he could maybe add a little bit more and give you like an energy roll off the bench, which I think is probably going to push him to the second round. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that a team takes a flyer on him late first.
And again, it's one of those things that maybe we don't know how these workouts are gonna turn out. Like if he hopefully has been putting in work on his body and is looking good, maybe adds a little more shoot. That's an unassumed, variable. I don't know. But yeah, I think ultimately probably second round, but I like him just because he's a big dude that can shut people.
Yeah.
I think that's a role in the NBA sometimes.
That's something.
No, and like I think you need that guy sometimes. He comes in for a few minutes and he just shoves somebody.
Yeah. You just hope that guy plays good defense, and I don't know about Isaiah on that end of the floor, but the one thing I always remember is this was an EYBL saying they had the 3 big men, and it was they were all ranked really high in their class. So it was James Wiseman, Vernon Carey, Isaiah Stewart. They would say that James Wiseman would maybe play hard 1 out of 10 times, maybe 3 out of 10 times. Vernon Carey would play hard 6 out of 10 times. And Isaiah Stewart would play hard every time, 10 out of 10. Yeah. So I feel like that number kind of goes down over time. And once they get to the NBA, like there are certainly players in the NBA whose motors run hot and cold. But I feel like a lot of people, once they get to the NBA, realize they have to try their ass off on just about every play.
Every play, yeah.
But yeah, Isaiah is at least the guy that brings the motor factor, not the highest factor on my board when it comes to drafting prospects, but he's always been a guy that has played well in front of me. So I have a hard time just like completely dropping him off the face of the earth. And yeah, I just think he's a guy that's going to get a chance to play on a few teams, and they'll see what happens.
Yeah, like he could hopefully. I mean, he's reminiscent of there's a lot of guys of his sort of ilk that play in the NBA. They, again, not your star, not the guy you're dumping it to in the post every drive down, but they come in, they're a big physical presence.
Yeah. Well, JV, I commend you. I think you did a great job. Jason put together his own draft board, and I put together my own draft board. And this was a great exercise. So hopefully it gives you guys a little bit more of an idea of who we are most interested in as draft prospects. We still have a lot of great prospects on the board.
Oh, totally.
Like I have put together an extra few players. Like there's going to be some value guys in the second round, as always. But yeah, this was a great exercise, and hopefully we do this again. We maybe get a chance to
well, again, between now and whenever.
gather some more information. And
Yeah.
like JB is kind of like, new to a lot of players in this draft class, but I felt like he did a great job. And please, though, tell us whose board you like more. And tell us which picks you like more.
Obviously.
Give us some comments here on our mock draft, and give us some players that you feel like should have gone in the first round that are slipping into the second round, where you think we are absolutely insane for letting them drop off of our boards.
And I love to hear about a second round sleeper too, like someone who's probably not getting that buzz, but you think, can come in, get an NBA roster spot, and really lock it down. Possibly, work out a good career.
I have a few, and yeah, these could be things that we talk about in the future, and maybe one day we'll do like a quick, when we give you a little bit more information about all of these players, we'll maybe do a quick 2-round mock draft where we don't necessarily go as in depth, but just give you kind of an idea of what our mock draft might look like. Yeah, Jason, what do you have going on in the future? Let's go.
Just watch some basketball. It's funny though, when we talk about the draft, you think it's so far away, but it's like we're in September right now. Like October's only a month and a half. Oh wait,
yeah, but we still don't even know if
it's going to be in October or what. There's a lot of variables and what those workouts look like. For me, my focus is really just watching. I want to see I love seeing these great playoff games. I'm super proud of what I've seen out of Jamal Murray, someone that we've had the privilege of watching, back when he was like a junior in high school, to see him, playing for a, Canadian team, Canadian high school, obviously a prep school that they kind of, brought in some ringers, and obviously he did.
Well, it was a prep school that kept top flight Canadian players
guys in Canada.
And yeah, Jamal Murray was like the flagship athlete of that school.
Yeah, as far as Canadians. And then
and now he's the flagship athlete of Canada. Pushing for shade, Gilgeous-Alexander tomorrow and Lou Jens Dort have done a very commendable job for Oklahoma City.
Lou Dort, is playing good.
Houston to the brink.
Yeah, Lou Dort, is, again, no one's going to guard James Harden perfectly, but just frustrated.
Done a great job.
Yeah, frustrating sometimes. Make it a little more
very
difficult.
Physical. The guy's always had this tremendous body, and he's done a great job there. He plays his heart out. He just really gives it all, and on both ends of the floor, it's one of those almost like live by die by kind of players, but he's done a really good job there, and he's been a presence for them when they've needed him on the defensive end. And in Game 6, made some crucial 3-pointers after missing like 15 in a row.
Shooting's not the strength.
But it's still like the fact that he's willing to do it, and then you just kind of hope it maybe builds from there. A few things we want to. Oh, what were you saying?
What series are you most excited about projecting second round out?
I'm really excited about this Milwaukee-Miami series. I think it's going to be very interesting. Miami obviously winning Game 1. But I really want to see what happens, and I want to see if Giannis does actually switch on to Jimmy. Where he got asked and goes like, "Oh, why would I do that?" And it's like, one defensive player of the year, dude. Like
one defensive player of the year, and that's what
the best player. Like
everybody's thinking. You're young, like you're big and long, like Jimmy was really cooking.
Yeah. And then you just with Budenholzer not necessarily playing his starters, the amount of minutes one would typically see in a playoff series, Milwaukee was a dominant regular season team, and had, I think, one of the highest point differentials in history. And usually point differential is a pretty good indicator of who the contending teams are. And the fact that Milwaukee had such a great one, you kind of felt like maybe it was theirs to lose. But there are some definite weaknesses there, and we'll see if they come back and maybe give an answer in this next game. It was still a very close game, but Jimmy Butler played out of his mind in Game 1. I think that's going to be a series that could potentially go down to the wire.
Well, the league wants him to do well because they have more of these Michelob Ultra commercials planned. So, if he gets eliminated, no more Hall & Oates.
I think that commercial is just going to live on in spirit. And then maybe if Jimmy's chilling, Like, he'll have a chance to make like a whole new one. Who knows?
Maybe. I hope, because
Maybe we can bring in Private Eyes. Bring in like a.
Jimmy's also on my list of players that, again, off the court coolness, like players that you're like, I could hang out with that guy, like Jimmy, Boban, Steven Adams.
You up with the country music?
Not a huge country music person.
Yeah, he's like that's the thing with Jimmy. But the playing the Hall & Oates thing, I do get down with.
Well, the question my wife always asks is, do you think he'd ever heard that song before he was asked to film this commercial?
I think he chose that song, I would hope. But yeah. But yeah, what we want to say is, also just to give a few shout outs. First off, I'm wearing a Georgetown jersey for everybody watching on YouTube. John Thompson just passed away. He was the guy that, when I was a little kid getting into college basketball, was Allen Iverson's head coach and had coached Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, nobody recruited centers like him.
Yeah, he just, Georgetown was center U. And he was a great coach. His son coached Georgetown for many years afterwards. So rest in peace to John Thompson. Obviously, condolences to everybody involved with Georgetown and a few other people that just passed away. We had Cliff Robinson, who was a player that we loved as Blazer fans.
I mean,
I still have the red Cliff Robinson headband that says Trailblazers on it, and I would wear that so consistently. If anybody was wearing a head, or when I was growing up, if you were wearing a headband, it was
Cliff Robinson. He was the only guy in the league at the time,
and was a great player as well.
That's the other thing. From anyone from the Oregon area,
like a stretch big, and was a lot of fun.
You can't be a Blazer fan if you don't have the Dairy Queen Pepsi cups.
Yeah,
with Clifford Robinson, Terry Porter, Kyle, like these are must-have items in your home. I consider it formal dining wear.
Indeed. Lute Olson, coached Arizona for years. They were point guard U. A lot of great players out of that institution.
I mean, a lot of
great contests with Oregon.
a lot of rosters where it's like he sent all five guys. Like went to the NBA
and won a national championship as well. That Mike Bibby, Miles Simon led team.
And then you look at a lot of his former players, in the coaching ranks. Now you got Luke Walton, you got Miles Simon's an assistant on the Lakers, David Sotomayor over at Pacific.
A lot of former coaches.
Yeah, like he's a huge on the pack 10-12.
Huge tree, and also Chadwick Boseman was somebody who stopped me in my tracks. I couldn't believe he was gone. Was an actor who had many iconic roles and played Jackie Robinson, had played James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, and of course was T'Challa, the Black Panther. And just a great actor. We didn't know what he was going through and came as a huge shock, and will be very much missed. On a happier note for my brother and I, my mom's birthday is September 2nd. It's when Viseland is coming out. So big happy birthday to her. But yeah, world's still going crazy. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening. Yeah. We really appreciate this. We hope that we give you a little bit of education into the NBA draft. We would love to make it a conversation, and definitely feel free to shoot us an email at viselandpod@gmail.com. He's at Jay Visenberg on Twitter. I am at NBA Draft Mikey V. Listen to us on Apple, on Spotify. Really appreciate you coming by and listening to Viseland.
Yep, and we'll catch you. New episodes come out every Wednesday, so hope to catch you next week. Have a good one.